Do you know how much it takes to hire a bus from Khartoum to the border?
About 1,000 kilometers.
$30,000 per bus. $30,000 per bus times 40 buses. Can somebody, any good mathematician amongst you? That is not billion.
Million. Yes.
That is where your 1.2 million comes into. We now mobilized the first tranche approved by federal government out of this, which is $400,000, and transferred it. If you take out $400,000, what does it come to?
800,000.
No, 1/3
Yes.
of the total. Once they gave us 13 buses, 13 buses times $30,000 is how much? 390. 30. Can somebody calculate for me?
That's
390 is correct, sir.
390. They stopped giving us. You remember I told you they gave us 13,000. They're supposed to give us 13 point something buses. They kept the 10,000. When you are traveling in Sudan, you don't enter a bus and start going. You must load it with water and biscuits. Yes. Believe me, I just became an expert on Sudan overnight because every day we discuss with them. And they told us our money is finished, bring another money.
Professor Femi Otubanjo joins us this morning. He's a professor of international politics and strategic studies, Nigerian Institute of International Affairs. He joins us virtually to discuss this. Good morning, Prof, and thank you so much for joining us. What's your assessment to begin with? Yes, sir. Of what's your assessment of the rescue, the evacuation efforts so far with the activities of the federal government?
Well, you know, in this kind of situations where there's an outbreak of violence, war, or almost like urban violence, it is difficult to determine when to evacuate. Determining when to and when not to. If you do it too quickly, which means that if the exchange of violence and fire ceases after 2 days, then you would have wasted everybody's time and resources that you put into it. Don't forget that evacuating people means dislodging them, almost disrupting their life, stopping their education, their businesses, wrenching them away from their resources, their assets, and so on. So you need to be careful that you do not do it too soon. But if you do it too late, then you end up with disaster. You might lose lives and so on. So when you see some delays in evacuating, it is not necessarily because of incompetence or indifference. It's a matter of assessing when it's appropriate to evacuate. Having done so, having now agreed to evacuate, decided to evacuate, we should do it. What I see here from the little clip that I saw is that there's a jurisdictional squabble here in Nigeria. The Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, the Nigerian Diaspora Commission, NEMA, the Ministry of External Affairs are all hustling to take control of this process. It is not the business of any other agency than the Ministry of External Affairs. I was watching the permanent secretary excitedly talking about this. The money is available. The Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs is a domestic ministry. They are supposed to come and to look after those people when they arrive.
Prof,
When
just
we
1 second.
focus
My apologies. Just to
on
be
the
clear.
resources that are available,
Prof, can you hear
we
me?
discovered that the fight is
just
about...
1 second, Prof, if you can hear me, so that
Yes.
this response you're giving can be actually quite well understood by people. It's a concern that has been raised quite a bit by a number of people as well. We're hearing the voice of NITCOM quite prominently. We're hearing the voice of NEMA quite prominently. We're hearing the voice of the Foreign Affairs Ministry quite prominently. We're hearing the voice of the Humanitarian Affairs Ministry quite prominently, and just over the past few days we began to hear the voice of the embassy in Sudan, the ambassador in Sudan. 5 authorities speaking on this issue, almost speaking discordantly, and everyone, as you said, jostling for authority. Just to be clear, because NEMA, for instance, is under the Humanitarian Affairs Ministry. NITCOM is operating through the Foreign Affairs Ministry, or so to speak. The embassy in Sudan operates with the Foreign Affairs Ministry, so to speak. So exactly who should be speaking? Who should be saying what? The affairs that concern the humanitarian affairs, who should be talking about it? You said it's the Foreign Affairs Ministry that we should be hearing. Is it the Foreign Affairs that should be talking about everything? Just to be clear, who should be taking the lead and prominent on this issue?
Yeah, obviously the Ministry of External Affairs. These other agencies are not known to international system. They are domestic institutions. The Ministry of External Affairs, through our embassy in Sudan, the ministry is the key actor here. All these other agencies can subscribe through the ministry. When you now have the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs going to charter buses in Sudan, where is the embassy? What do you have the embassy for? It is not the business of that ministry. And that's what you get from Nigerian politics and from that scramble to control money. What you are finding is that the focus is not on the people, the objective, but on the control of the resources. So that creates its own problem. So the Ministry of External Affairs has to put pressure on the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs to release money that should normally have gone to it. But because of political connections, some ministries get the money that should go to another ministry. And then you begin to have this delay in terms of when do you release money, who do you give money to? It is not the business of humanitarian affairs. I'm sorry, that's the way that's not the way it should be. And that is part of the reasons why we have this delay. Now the Ministry of the embassy has been talking, is the one inviting the students to go and congregate in 2 universities where they will be taking. The Ministry of External Affairs, the embassy is the one that will negotiate with the Egyptian at the border about visas and accommodation and all those things, not humanitarian affairs. Nobody knows them abroad.
Well, just a quick one on that one.
Right.
Yeah, just a quick one on that same issue you're raising. When we had this conversation with an official of NEMA in, I think it was last week, he is already in Cairo at this moment. And what he said was that, hey, we did this before when we evacuated Nigerians from Ukraine. We can do it again. That's what we are doing now. We will get our children home safely. So it would seem like it's a system that's perpetuated over time. And you say it is the reason for this delay.
Yeah, if you have done the wrong thing before, and we do it, and that is a common thing in Nigeria, we continue to repeat the wrong thing, doesn't make it right. But that you have done it before, a wrong precedent does not translate into the right procedure. The ministry, NEMA, is not supposed to jump ahead. That's what you find, because at the end of the day, the officials are going to get extra code, they are going to stay in 5-star hotels, they're going to benefit individually, and so they jump into issues that are not their own. NEMA is a domestic management agency, emergency management agency, not an international agency. We have an embassy. The embassy will liaise with the ministry. The ministry will liaise with other agencies, including the military. If it requires military aircrafts to go and evacuate it is the ministry, not these agencies. They have no local standard. We must continue to do. If you don't do things right, we'll get the wrong results. And that, I'm not saying this is responsible for the delay, but these are delay factors. And if we are seeing delays, part of the reason is that we are giving money to Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, who is now releasing money piecemeal. Right? When you say you have 1.2 million allocated to evacuation, and you are telling us that you have spent exactly 1.2 million on renting buses.
Prof, now that you raise the point,
money for other things.
Pardon me, Prof, if I may come in there. Now that you raised the point about the Humanitarian Affairs Ministry being a domestic ministry, I wonder if their novelty in Sudanese affairs, perhaps is responsible for the figure, given by the federal government has been the amount expended on this evacuation exercise, because at the time that report, came about, Nigerians raised eyebrows about that sum, that it was rather expensive, but that both sides of the debate about that sum. Could it have been, less expensive if this venture was carried out, was executed by the Foreign Affairs Ministry through the Nigerian diplomatic mission in Sudan?
I'm not, the issue is not about the whether it's expensive or not. It's not that. It is that the wrong agency should be allowed to manage it. The money should not have been released to humanitarian affairs. If humanitarian affairs is going to be concerned, it is when those people arrive in Nigeria that you now give them humanitarian support. The Ministry of External Affairs has all the facilities, the consular facilities, and so on, to do all these things. We don't need NEMA and NITCOM, all of them muscling in, which is what we do in Nigeria. But because people have privileged opportunities in Abuja, they can get this money out and put and try to unfortunately push the appropriate agency aside. It's a matter of political influence at play here. Those who can get money approval from the president, not those who are supposed to do it. If people are supposed, have you heard, go and look at evacuation. Over 20, 25 countries have evacuated their citizens. Is there a scramble by agencies? It is the embassy that invites the military to bring whatever they want to bring. C-130 helicopters, whatever lorries, buses, to evacuate themselves, because the embassy collects information from these people, knows where they are, and has a way of communicating with them to go to the staging posts. It is the embassy that has all the information.
Now, Prof, Prof, let's look at the mode of transportation. Some have talked about how clumsy this land transportation has been and the attendant dangers involved. And we've seen how other countries have chosen to evacuate their citizens by transporting them by sea. If you look at the topography and the geography, of the region itself, should Nigeria have explored and been creative by, looking at other options of transporting and evacuating their citizens?
Who can bring their planes and so on. But one of the things that you have to know is that evacuation in such a situation requires negotiation. People have to get passes. You have to be able to use the Khartoum airport is not operational, but there are alternative airports in Khartoum and surrounding towns. So you have to be able to negotiate that. That can only be done by our embassy. But it's not even safe to send your place where jets are flying and bombers are flying around. So what you do is to use the safest form of transportation. And for now, the bus, the road transportation is the safest because to get them to the nearest country, which is Egypt, or to Ethiopia.
All right.
So I think there's nothing wrong in using buses to transport people. And of course, when you look at the numbers of people that you have, how many planes do you want to understand that 1,600 people were in the first batch, and altogether we have more than 5,000 students in Sudan. And so you can only do that with aircrafts.
Okay.
In any case, it is unsafe to use aircrafts. And so the best thing is to first evacuate them to the nearest point, and then use aircraft to move them from Egypt or from Ethiopia.
Yeah, my sincere apologies, Prof. We are completely out of time, but if you can do this in 10 seconds, do you think the embassy in Sudan is funded well enough for this operation?
Well, if they're not getting part of this money, they cannot be funded. No embassy is funded well in Nigeria. In any of our embassies, you can go and have the story is out of financial disaster. So when they get to this emergency, they need extra money to be able to do it.
Okay.
And if you give that extra money to another agency, then you are making them useless.
We have to thank you very much this morning, Professor Femi Otubanjo, Professor of International Politics and Strategic Studies, Nigeria Institute of International Affairs. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you for having me. Have a happy Workers' Day.
And you too, sir. Well, that's too much of that. We're back right after now to take on other issues. Please stay with us.